Okay, so we're in Daf Tet Amud Aleph, and we hope to get to Amud Bet and to the Mishnah. That's we got to do that. So let's start. We're at the Tashma at the very bottom. We're still kind of in the sugya of trying to prove whether Rechiva is Koneh, I guess, really. We're still in the midst of that. Sari, maybe you want to start us off?
I think that I'm going to have a baby who's going to wake up in like 3 minutes. So someone else should read because I'm going to have to feed her. So.
All right. How about Jessica?
Sure. From the Tashma Rabbi Eliezer Omer?
Yeah, Rabbi Eliezer Omer.
So, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rechuv b'sadeh u'manhig be'ir kaneh. Hachanami manhig b'raglav.
Wait. So what's the kasha and what's the teruts?
So the kasha is that we've said that manhig shouldn't be kaneh. We just said it
manhig
is.
Shouldn't be kaneh, or rechuv shouldn't be kaneh?
Rechuv shouldn't be kaneh. And here we seem to be saying that it is. But the teretz is that also means rechuv when he's leading it in this meaningful way with his feet.
Right, and therefore that for sure would work. That wasn't our question at all. Our question was rechuv where he's not manhig b'raglav.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it's not a proof of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's the Makshan is now rejecting this.
Mm-hmm. Ihachi manhig tregavne manhig. Well, if
No. Wait, you skipped.
Did I?
Ihachi. What's the next two words?
Hainu manhig tregavne manhig.
I think actually after the word manhig is a question mark.
Sorry, yes. Ihachi hainu manhig tregavne manhig. So if so, wouldn't that constitute leading?
So
and then we say, well,
what's this kasha? It's really a kasha. It's a question mark or exclamation mark or kasha. Yeah. It's a kasha. So what's this kasha?
So in the Baraita, we've called it rechuv and manhig. But if we're saying that the first case is actually manhig, then why didn't they use the word manhig?
Right. So what should the Baraita have said?
It should have said Rabbi Eliezer Omer, manhig v'sadeh or manhig b'raglav v'sadeh or something.
Right.
Or manhig b'ir kaneh.
Right. Manhig b'sadeh or manhig b'ir kaneh. Because they're both types, they're both manhig.
Mm-hmm. Should
have, why is it saying rechuv? It's manhig. I mean, I'm being a little bit strong in saying that that's what he's saying, but it's something to that. In other words, he's saying, why does it use the word manhig? I mean, you're rochev if it means manhig. Joel, what do you want?
No, I wanted to ask if your permission, if we could do the Rashi there, because it's interesting and to me, but we can wait till later or not do it. It's up to you. But
I think we will. All right, I'm happy to if you suggest it. But
do you want me to do it or?
Well, no. What is the next three words? Before we get there, what is the next three words? Tre gavne manhig. What does that mean?
Tre gavne manhig. There are two types of manhig. And therefore, this is in teretz to why the Baraita used the word rechuv. It's to different, like, sure, these are both manhig, but we've got like manhig, and we've got rechuv manhig.
And why? But still, like, why do I need to? What do I? Lamai nafkamina. And actually, didn't we see those same words? If you turn back a page, it said on the. I mean, not back a page. If you look to the right, you'll see. Just on page Chet Amud Bet, 4 lines from the bottom, it also gave this teretz Trei Gavne Manhig. You see that? It's almost the same language, and it says, but then it goes on. Mahu de tema rachuv adif. I might have thought rachuv is adif taha manhig v'tafisba. Kamash malan that rachuv is not adif. So my question is like, what is this? There should be in our Gemara also a mahu de tema. There's two types of manhig. And we should have said what you might have thought. Where would you have gone wrong? Where would you have gone wrong if it had been just written manhig be'ir, manhig be'sadeh? What would have been your mistake? You see what I'm saying? Like there's a mahal tema missing here. So can we fill it in for the Gemara?
I'm sorry, I really don't understand what you're getting at, and I'm hoping you clarify.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to understand what does it mean tre gavne manhig? That's basically how is that answering his kasha that it says ihachi hainu manhig?
Well, it seems like from the writer that Rabbi Eliezer doesn't think that Rechuv manhig be'ir is kana.
No, we're saying it's rachuv beraglav, so he is rachuv manhig.
But
I mean, I know what you mean by rachuv manhig. You mean a rachuv manhig beraglav?
Why would Rabbi Eliezer say manhig be'ir kane? You know, rachuv v'sadeh u'manhig be'ir kane. If he thought that rachuv manhig be'ir was also kane.
Be'ir. Wait.
As in,
wait, are you answering? Wait,
you had Rabbi Eliezer is differentiating between the city and the Sedeh.
He seems to be differentiating between the city, but in the end, it's well. First of all, look at Rashi. There's a Rashi on manhig be'ir where he says that manhig be'ir is kone and kol shekain v'sadeh. Joel, where is that Rashi?
There's one that's
The Bormachil is Rachuv Basadeh. That's the one I wanted to do anyway. So.
The second to last one on the page.
Yeah.
Second Rachuv Basadeh. So there. So Joel, read that for us.
Sure. Rachuv Basadeh. Behemasha Metzia Kone Avalo Ba'ir. All right. So if you're writing here, we're seeing as Manhig Baraglav, an animal that was a lost animal, so it was Hefger. That works. But it doesn't work in the city. All right. But Tama Mefarish Lakame, we're going to explain the reason coming up. Umanhig af ba'ir kana. But a manhig here, it's like the regular manhig, you know, someone who is hitting it with a switch or something like that. That works. Even
I do disagree with you actually already. Sorry.
Oh, great.
I think that we're in the Havamina still, and we're assuming that he's not the Rochev is not manhig baraglav.
Oh, you're right. We're in the earlier part. You're correct. Sorry.
We're talking about where it's Rachuv B'Sadeh is just a regular Rachuv. He's not manhig baraglav. And then a regular manhig, any manhig, I'll be a little kitzoni and I'll say any manhig.
Yeah.
If you see where I'm hinting at, I'm saying any manhig, even maybe a manhig baraglav when he's writing. Any manhig, af be'ir kaneh. He is koneh be'ir.
Good. And all the more so in the sadeh, right? That a manhig would work, right? If in other words, it's more likely for a kinyan to work in the sadeh than it is in the city. It's a more limited scope of kinyanim according to this Rashi. Shema mina, all right? Rachuv l'chudei kani. This is the proof that this is not rachuv manhig. That's manhig baraglav. Learn from this that rachuv by itself, in other words, without manhig baraglav, is koneh.
Right. And then we're going to explain. No. We're talking about manhig baraglav. But wait. So let's just explain where we are up to now. So basically, it's like this. Rashi is saying that the manhig acquires everywhere. I mean, and let's just say a manhig is like the classic way to acquire things. You hit the animal from behind. You whisper. You call to it. You're koneh, whether it's in sadeh or sadeh. It's koneh and kol shekain in the ear. Am I saying that right? No.
Yeah.
The ear, ubakol shekain b'sadeh.
But It's the big.
Manhig ba'ir is kane, and kol shekain b'sadeh. Sadeh, if he acquires in the ear, then certainly in the field where, like, it's always normal to drive your animals in the field. You know, that's totally normal. So in the city, if it acquires, certainly in the field. But riding only works in the
And here riding means sitting at the moment.
riding in, which means sitting. It only works. Well, we'll see. Yeah, riding means sitting. Yeah, that's what I tried to say before. Tosfos, of course, thinks that he's going a little bit right.
Yeah. I'm sitting, and it's the Tosfos from the previous.
It's Tobias from the right. Tosfos thinks that he's sitting, but he's moving a little bit. Anyway, sitting on, riding on the animal, not driving, not forcing, not hitting it forward, but just sitting on it, works in the field. And then we say, and not in the ear. If you ride in the city, it doesn't work. Who rides in a city? You don't ride in a city. It's crazy. You know, and we're going to see in the Hemshech of the Gemara, like you're going to hit people, or whatever. There's different reasons why we wouldn't ride in the field. It's not sanua, we're going to say, but even nowadays we would say it's kind of unusual to see somebody riding in the city, especially if you think of like small, like the Ir Atika with like the small streets. Or a Greek town with small pedestrian streets. The streets in a city are narrow. A road is like between cities, that's something else. But the streets in the city are very narrow. So riding is so riding works only in the field, but not in the city. So basically all Rabbi Eliezer is trying to tell us is that riding is limited, but manhig is not limited. Right? Is that good?
Yeah, but I think the Rashi is interesting in that the first read of this, right, I think it almost sounds like Rashi is like mefaresh bechinam, right? There's no necessary reason to say that this Breita forces your hand to say that manhig basadeh is kona, right?
I think I did see a hint later on what forced Rashi to say this.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, the interesting question, right? Is why is he saying that? I think he could actually be filling in the mahut tema here to some extent, right? It's why you need to differentiate that is that in general manhig works everywhere, but there are some forms of manhig that don't work everywhere, right?
Wait. We're in the Havamina still. Don't go that far. We're in the Havamina, and we're just saying now the assumption is that Rachuv Lechudei, just riding, doesn't work works in a field but doesn't work in the city. So now we say no, he is using his legs. So we're still saying that he doesn't acquire, if he uses his legs and rides, what? Then all of a sudden he
doesn't acquire in the city. He acquires in the field only.
He still only acquires in the field. And if he had written manhig, then he would have had a wrong din.
Yeah, you'd think that riding a horse in the city, it will say, I'll maximize it in like the middle of the marketplace, right? Would be kona because it's manhig. Riding a horse and kicking it with your legs.
Riding a horse and kicking, but in other words, it's sort of like the riding ruins the manhig aspect of it. If you were just manhiging it in some other way, fine. But riding and manhiging doesn't. So that's the trey. So maybe that's what the trey gavne, that's what you want to say. That's the trey gavne de manhig means. There's two kinds of manhig. There's a manhig that's regular manhig that acquires everywhere. And then there's this rachuv manhig, which is garua, which is ruined. It's ruined, and it has less ability to acquire. It can't acquire in a city because you've done something. It's kind of like that. That for some reason that riding just ruined the driving. Of course, there are explanations of this Gemara that disagree with Rashi. There are some Rishonim that say, no, each one is its own opinion. In other words, there's only one way to buy. Manhig is only acquiring in the city and not in the field at all. But that's a side point, maybe. Okay, so I think we answer it. So is that a good answer? Is that a good answer? Trey gavne de manhig. That I would have thought, if you'd written manhig or manhig, that writing would work in a city because it's a form of manhig. Comes to teach me, no, this form of manhig is a different form which doesn't work in the city.
Nachum?
Oh,
Oh,
I
Sarah,
thought,
Sarah,
yeah, I have my head. I still think that the problem that Jessica raised earlier is still a problem, which is that why, if we mean to make this distinction, then it seems like the first half of the Breita where we say, Rabbi Elier's Rachuv Basadeh. It seems like that always seems like that's saying he wouldn't say that if he thought only Rachuv Manhig worked. Right? Or if he meant to distinguish between those two kinds, he wouldn't just say Rachuv Basadeh Manhig Ba'ir. Seems like a very, I don't know if I'm not articulating
You're saying
carefully.
you don't think that he meant when he says Rachuv Basadeh, it works and it doesn't work, it doesn't work in the city. You're saying, but well, why not? He meant to say that kind of rachuv that has with his feet doesn't work in the city. And he's not talking about rachuv of regular rachuv. That's not his point. He's not interested in that question. That question maybe is obvious that it doesn't work, or it does work. But rachuv with his feet doesn't work.
And it would work everywhere?
No, rachuv.
Or it would not work everywhere.
And using his feet, rachuv manhig, as you called it, rachuv manhig beraglav, doesn't work in the city. Even though manhig works everywhere, this manhig is the trei gavne. That's the two kinds. This manhig is the kind of manhig that's a worse kind of manhig because he got on the horse and now it ruined his ability to acquire. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. I'm happy to have
only in the field.
What?
Only in the field, which would be the place where you would potentially ride an animal and guide it with your legs, more likely. Like where that's a more natural thing to do.
Exactly. Rachuv umanhig, right? Rachuv umanhig beraglav besadeh works. In other words, that riding that you did in the city is such an evil thing, is such an inappropriate thing, or unusual thing. Really, would be the better way to say it. It's so unusual. It's not the derech. So therefore, it ruins the fact that you're manhig. Even though you're manhig, the manhig goes away. I think that's what you have to say. Yeah? I mean, questions or?
I mean, my question is just the question the Gemara will raise, but and I find it's so convincing that just because the Rechuv is unusual in the city that would somehow nullify the fact that it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not trying to really explain. There's two things to do. The first step is to get the technical steps of what the Gemara is doing technically. And then the question is, does it make sense? What's the logic behind it? But first I have to figure out what has to be saying something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Joel, you have a question? You have your hand up, Joel.
That's just two things. One is that actually with the Rashi, it has a nice parallel to the Gamal Chamor thing, where 3 out of 4 methods work. Right? There's Tzad Echad that doesn't work, and here the Tzad Echad is Rachum. Is Manhig. Regular Manhig works both in the Sadeh and the ear, and Rachuv works in the Sadeh, but not Rachuv Manhig Beraglav works in the Sadeh, but not the ear. So we have another one where there's like Tzad Echad. The general rule is Manhig works, but there's one version of it that doesn't work somewhere, right? Or in one case.
You're talking about right, like pulling the camel versus pushing the camel.
Yeah, which are all kinds of manhig as well, or all kinds of meshicha, maybe, whatever the general category we want to call it. But the other thing, I just like, and I typed this in the thing, but at this point, the way the Gemara has gone is that every Tanaitic source that has the word rachuv, we said is rachuv manhig beraglav.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. So because we're trying to, again, this is all like, because we're trying to refute the proof, right? All I have to do is show that you don't have a proof that this is talking about regular rachuv.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's a bit unusual answer, it's still possible, and therefore you can't prove to me that we're talking about regular rachuv.
Yeah. So the only person who necessarily uses rachuv to not mean rachuv manhig beraglav is Shmuel at this point.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting. Yeah.
Max, you have a question or comment?
You just answered it.
Oh, I didn't say anything. Joel answered it.
The two of you together in dialogue. Yes, answered it.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So that's what the Gemara is saying, that that's what Rebbe Eliezer meant. And now continue, Jessica. Ihachi.
Ihachi, Rechuv Be'ir, Maitam Elokane. Amar Rav Kahana, Lefi she'en tachan shel bnei Adam lechov be'ir. So why wouldn't writing work in the city to acquire? Because people don't write in the city.
And Rashi says, Mishum tzniuta. Because I guess they wore like a long coat, and you have to lift it up and show your legs. And they probably didn't wear pants. They didn't wear pants.
They're not wearing trousers, right? They're wearing like a
exactly. Probably not wearing trousers.
So,
Right.
I
said that in the 19th century, women used to play harps, and the reason was so that when they played the harp, they had to lift up their dress a little bit, and you could see their ankles, and then that was considered very sexy.
Real problem for cellists.
Yeah. Oh, cellists, same thing, But he was. I'm just quoting my father. I don't know. Okay, so you would be not sanua if you rode in the city. I mean, I would think of other things that I could think of. It's just like, again, I was discussing this with my kids, what the difference between the word street and road is. And street is like is a city street which is paved. Like you'd ever see a dirt street. You say a dirt road. Because it's a road is something that could be paved or not paved, because it's really usually not paved, because going from one city to another, as opposed to a street, which is in the city and it's almost always paved. It should always be paved because the city is like little cobblestones, and it's a little narrow street. So that's what a city is. And riding a horse there is not sanua, maybe because you see the legs, maybe some other reason. This is related.
I actually think Rashi is then going to explain that to us later. And I think it might also be that it's not appropriately modest unless you're an Adam Chashuv.
Right. It may not be that you're showing your legs, because if you're Adam Chashuv, then what? Now all of a sudden you can show your legs? So maybe it's just like the behavior is a not sanua behavior. It's not that you're exposing your legs, perhaps. Maybe it's just like, it's not a sanua way of behaving to ride in the city. It seems like outrageous. What is he riding in the city? He's going to, people are trying to, I sometimes have a bicycle in the old city, and, I have to get off the bicycle. I'm not going to ride in the narrow streets. It's going to bother people. Maybe it's like annoying to have a horse going through those narrow streets. And it's like, but he's an important person. Maybe that's acceptable then all of a sudden. So maybe so maybe it means sanua in the sense of showing your feet, and maybe it means the behavior that's just not a sanua behavior.
It's haughty, potentially.
It's haughty. Yeah, exactly. Sanua being the opposite of haughty. Yeah.
I think that's also supported in the Tosfot here, not to spoil it, but where they kind of talk about, right, like very similar to what you're talking about with the bike, right? By riding, you're kind of disrupting the flow of public traffic and public events for your own needs. Very few people are supposed to have the leeway to kind of reorganize public space around their needs. You're supposed to dismount and be on everyone else's line.
Exactly. So that's what I was saying. There's like these two different ways of thinking about tzniut. But the posture would be that that you show something, and the better explanation maybe is that you're just like you just said. Thank you, Michael. Here, Jessica, maybe you'll read the Tosfot.
The one that's Ihachi Rechuv.
Yeah, the last is a short one.
Yeah. Ihachi Rechuv be'ir Maitam Elokane. Iga sinan Ihachi Hachi Pirish.
Wait a second. Wait a second. So first of all, was a girsa without ihachi? What's the difference with it, whether it is there or not there?
Well, they're going to say what they think the difference is. No,
he's going to say what the parish is. Okay, fine. You can read the Tosfot and then say.
If there's no ihachi, then you're not necessarily accepting the conclusion that Tre Gavne Manhig.
Oh, no, you could be accepting it, but
But you're not necessarily.
well, I would say
Yeah, it's like
differently. Yeah, go ahead.
half is like granted for the sake of argument, right? Which implies, okay, we might not grant that Trey Gavney Manik. But we'll go along with it.
No, but what would it read if without the ihaki? It would just be Trey Gavne Manhig. And then now it would just say period. And it would say Rachuv Ba'ir my time Lokane without the ihaki. So how would that be different from saying ihaki? Here, Jacob.
Could it be implying that like the Rachuv Ba'ir could be talking about Rachuv that's not Manhig Baraglav?
Exactly. We could be going back to our original statement. In other words, the question would then be a general question, regardless of whether we take this ukimta, we take this new explanation that he's also Manhig Baraglav, but just anybody who's Rachuv, why is he not Koneh? And now, but those saying no. But if he says ihachi, then it's only the question. This question only comes to light because of the previous answer. That's what the ihachi means. Because of the previous answer, now I ask this question. I would never have asked this question had I not heard that answer. But if you don't have ihachi, then I might have answered that. I might have asked this question anyway. Irrespective.
It's like a conjunction. It's like a conjunction connecting the Tregavne to everything following. Otherwise, we're just moving on to something new. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So go ahead, Jessica. Now,
Rav Nachum, do you mind if I just add one piece to that? Just to, right, is also it sounds like if we had just said it was Rachuv was Yoshev, it would have been completely acceptable to us that Rachuv is only Koneh Basadeh, right? But the fact that now that we say it's Manhig Baraglav, now all of a sudden we're weirded out that it doesn't work in the year. So Tosfot has to explain that part of it.
Yeah, exactly right. In other words, up till now, right. Up till now, that's even a better explanation. Thank you, Joel. I was just saying we're weirded out. We don't understand. Up till now, we did understand why Rachuv was not Koneh. Why was that? Because the Tosa is going to say that, I think. Yeah. So go ahead, Jessica.
Okay. הכי פירוש. אם אתה בשלמה לא מהיר במנהיג ברגליו, לכך בעיר לא קנה. So, if you say that granted we're not dealing with the case of using your feet to guide the animal while you're riding it,
which was our Havamina,
then therefore why wouldn't you acquire in the city? The law as
not why, no. Therefore, not why.
Well, therefore he doesn't acquire in the city.
Exactly, yeah. That's why. So then I understand why he doesn't acquire the city, because he's not Manhig Baraglav.
דלה אז למחנתה לפי שיש בני אדם המדברים יחד ויש כמה דברים באמצע הדרכים. So the animal doesn't necessarily go according to him because there's actually lots of people talking together and there's lots of things in the middle of the road.
So wait a second. So what was his understanding? So he's saying, why don't you acquire when you ride in the city particularly?
Because you're not really meaningfully leading the animal. You're in a flow of traffic. Right.
So Tosfos is saying that you would be meaningfully leading the animal if you'd be in a sadeh, even though you're not what? You're not doing what?
You're not doing Metzia.
No, you're not doing Raglav. You're not doing Manhig Raglav.
Yeah.
In other words, Tosfos' conception is that sitting on the animal in the field acquires because you are leading the animal a little bit. You're just not manhiging him you're not leading him with your legs, but he is, in the words that are written here, azla machmate, right? Doesn't he say that? Delo azla machmate. In other words, because there's so much stuff going on, he's not azla, but in the field, he is azla machmate, and that's why you're koneh. So why is Rochev koneh? Says Tosfos, why is Rochev Konet? What's the Havamina that Rochev is Konet? Or in the field, he is Konet. Because it's a kind of leading without leading.
It's control of the animal.
Yeah, it's some kind of control of the animal, but you're not manhig raglav. It's not full leading. And this reminds me of the Tosfos that we saw on Amud Bet of Davchet that says Rachuv Adif de Tafispa, that one. And in that Tosfos, I'm not going to read it now again, but the third Tosfos on the page on Amud Bet of Chet Amud Bet, he talks about also that the animal, when you're riding it, it's going a little bit because of your sitting on it, even though you're not manhig raglav. So Tosfos has this. So Tosfos seems to be consistently saying that the whole question that we're dealing with of why would Rachuv koneh is because Rachuv is a form of causing the animal to go forward, and maybe that's a kind of manhig, kind of, but it's not really manhig. It's not really manhig. Manhig is with raglav. It's something in between. It's rochev. It's a special thing called rochev, which is like the animal goes because of me, and it's sort of like it's almost like similar to rechiv to manhig, but not the same, but not quite manhig. If it would be full manhig, then it would work, maybe even in the city. But it doesn't work in the city because you don't actually get the animal you don't direct it. But now that you're telling me, so now go on. But now that you're telling me that he's manhig raglav, says Tosfos, so continue.
Ela minan b'manhig raglav, im ken az lamchante tuva v'mailakane. So if he is leading with his feet, then it's really going because of him. And so then why wouldn't it acquire?
Right. Even I would say it's tuva. It's properly going, even though there are obstacles. You're telling the animal go right, go left. There's people screaming, but you're directing. You are really in control. You're in full control. So now I don't understand why it doesn't acquire. And now we have to get onto this whole. In other words, essentially it should acquire, but there's some kind of parenthetical, or I don't know how to say it, like some kind of a tangential reason, superfluous, some kind of external reason that it doesn't work because it's not sanua, the Gemara is going to say. But really it should work because it is now proper hanhaga. And that's why we say, Ihachi rachuv ba'ir my time elokani. Because up till now I understood why it didn't acquire in the city because he wasn't really causing it to move forward. But now you tell me he is causing it to move forward, why doesn't he acquire? So therefore, Rav Kahana has to say, well, because this is just, I mean, I don't even understand the answer. The answer is almost like, is it Rabbanan? What does he say? It's not the normal derech. Okay, it's not the normal derech, so it doesn't work. Okay, but it's a type of kinyan that would work in a field. Why doesn't it work? So it's a proper kinyan. It just doesn't work. Wait a second.
Don't we have the same thing just at the top of the page where there's a derech for a hamor and a derech for a gamal, and one of them doesn't work, right? So we've got this question: if we are manhig.
No, but remember, didn't we conclude there? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. My Talmidei Chachamim here. Didn't we conclude that that's only when there's an opposition, when there's two different forces, one doing this type of leading and one doing the other type of leading, but in isolation, in an isolated chamber, then any method would work for anyone as long as they're a valid method.
Right. I mean, not to get too philosophical here, but it seems like kinyan is socially dependent here. Right? Like you have two different settings, and whatever is the way that people do it in Sadeh, like that works for them, and if the city works over there.
I mean, actually, my question is going to go away because the Gemara is going to ask my question, basically. But Joel, what do you want to say?
Well, no, I was going to say that was the machloket that we saw actually as to whether or not the Kedarka works. But the Rambam, if I remember correctly, seemed to think that everything works, and this was only a question of when they're two competing. But other Rishonim thought no, that this is actually that actually if you do things in unusual ways, it's not kinyan. So.
Right. Okay. I'm right. So I'm answering according to the Rambam. I'm learning according to the Rambam. Thank you. But yeah, if the Rambam says it, then I'm certainly in good company. But yeah, in other words, this, and that's the Gemara's question. That's actually going to be the next question of the Gemara. Mapitom, like I always like to say, Mapitom, it doesn't work. If it works, it works. If it's a thing that works, it should work. I think the Gemara, sort of the next question. Who wants to read? Maybe Max, you want to read on?
From where exactly?
Well, you can read again. I'm a Rav Kahana.
Okay. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Amar of Kahana. Lefisha ein darkan shobnei adam yokov ba'ir. Amar le Rav Ashi le Rav Kahana elameata hagbi arniki b'Shabbat she'ein darkan shobnei adam lahagbia arniki b'Shabbat hachinami.
Hachinami lokani.
Yes. Ella my da'avad avad. So
no, you got to keep reading. Read a little more.
Vikani. Hachanami my da'avad avad vikani. Okay. So Rav Ashi replies to Rav Kahana, but now what about the case of the person who lifts up a coin purse on Shabbat? In such case, it also isn't a person's way to lift a coin purse on Shabbat. So here too, the person shouldn't acquire.
And is he saying that rhetorically or as a statement of fact?
He's saying if you're saying that the person doesn't acquire the behemah because it's she'ein darkan shel bnei adam lirkov, then you would also have to say that a person who picks up an arniki on Shabbat does not acquire because it's ein darkan shel adam.
But yeah, and does that seem reasonable to him?
No, it doesn't, because the dean in the case of the arniki is that he, even though he shouldn't have done it, what's done is done, and the acquisition took place.
I feel like these cases are significantly different, right? It's perfectly common to pick up a purse with your hand. It's just the fact is that's Asar and Shabbat.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not like, apparently no one goes around just mounting.
Right, I understand. You're right. That's exactly what I said when I first read this Gemara. I said, well, this is very different types of abnormality. One is abnormal because the whole maaseh is just an abnormal maaseh, and here it's a normal maaseh. It's just the time. The time that you're doing it is abnormal, but I think that's irrelevant. I think the point is his attack is essentially saying either modes of kinyan work or they don't work. You can't give me, as I was saying, extraneous factors that are going to remove the ability of a kinyan to work. Of course, actually, now that I say those words, that's exactly what we did say about Rachuv Ba'ir when he's Rachuv Raglav, that all of a sudden doesn't work because if he would be manhig regular, then it would work, and he's manhig Raglav, it wouldn't work. Anyway, he's saying this doesn't make any sense. Sorry, I'm giving too many different points at the same time. But to answer your question, Alan, yes, you're right. These are totally different types of abnormality, but nevertheless, who says that any kind of his point is that abnormality shouldn't uproot something that intrinsically is a valid type of kinyan. And this is a valid type of kinyan to ride, say you. Don't tell me because of tznius. Yeah, comments? You shouldn't have done it. You weren't sanua, but it should work. So what's the answer?
Ela b'mekach u'memkar askinan ta'amar le kani kaderech shebnei adam konin. So the response is the case of buying and selling is different, and that's the one that we're dealing with. And it's a case in which the seller said to the buyer, acquire it in the normal way. that people acquire.
So wait, before you go on, yeah. So what is he saying? He's saying, you know what? This is a special case. Our Braita is talking about. We thought it was talking about Metzia, right? And he's saying it's not Metzia. And it's only talking about a case of Mechak or Memchar where somebody made a Tanai. He made some kind of condition, right? I can make a Tanai. I can say, you can buy this only if you use this form of Kinyan. Only if you use one of the 25 valid forms. So then if he doesn't use one of the 25, if he doesn't use that, one, and uses one of the other 24 forms or whatever they are, then it won't work. And I can make conditions on my sale. But ein hachenami, what's the din by Metzia? Now I'm making you think here. So what would the din be by Metzia? He's sort of admitting his failure.
Well, there would be a kinyan.
It would be, what would be a kinyan? Which case?
Rechuv b'sadeh. I'm sorry, rechuv b'ir.
Rechuv b'ir, exactly. Rechuv b'ir, where he's manhig b'raglav, would work for sure. Why? Because because the only reason to say that rechuv b'ir doesn't work is because you're not really causing it to move because you're not using your legs because there's all kinds of people in the way. But if you're manhig b'raglav in the city and you're rechuv, you bought it. You acquired that animal. If you found it. But and if you bought it also, if the guy who sold it to you didn't make any kind of provisos. But if he said, buy it in the normal way. So I'm just saying everything that we said now is being pushed off into the realm of stipulations of the seller. But in normal case, like you said, Alan, exactly. Rachuv Ba'ir acquires as long as you're riding. And now the Gemara is going to get into a discussion of what are these cases where when the buyer says, buy it in a normal way, what is the normal way? Now we have to all of a sudden discover what is the normal way. It's like the Gemara asks, if I swear I'm never going to have grape juice, so what does that mean? Well, okay, does it mean also grape juice mixed with water? Does it mean also wine? And what are the things included in this proviso? And it's all very off the topic. And we still don't know whether Rachuv without using manhig raglav works. So read on a little bit. So now we're going to give this list.
V'i reshut harabim hu kani, v'i adam chashuv hu kani, v'i isha hi kanya, v'i inish zilahu kani. So these are the exceptions where Rachuv, manhig Rachuv, but ir is kani. If it's in a reshut harabim, if it's an important person, if it's a woman, or if it's a base man, the kinyan nevertheless takes effect.
All right, so read Rashi.
The irishut harabim hukani, ba'ir diderech lirchov sham v'lo lahanhig penif saku ovre drachim beino levein behemoto. So in the reshut harabim, it's actually not customary to lead a donkey because one might get separated from the animal by the people passing by on the street.
Right. So therefore, if it's like a thoroughfare, you should ride. It actually is normal all of a sudden to ride. That's what it says, Irishut Rabim. So yes. So we're still wondering, so where is it that you can't ride in the city? Well, it's kind of what I was saying from the beginning, small, narrow streets.
That comes
not the Reshut Rabim, which is a boulevard. V'i Adam Chashuv.
Ein darcho lahanhig behema baraglav v'derech kavod lirchov alea af basimta she'ein bnei adam sham v'chen isha she'ein ba koach la'achoz behema pen tinatek himena. So the cases of the isha and the adam chashuv apply even to like small lanes in the city, because due to the kavod, due to the Adam Chashuv, or the inability of a woman due to her weakness to lead the animal, even in a small alley or a street. We allow for the kinyan to take place.
And right,
Yes.
and this is where we were talking about before, where we seem to not be worried about sneus all of a sudden. And maybe I mean, if you want to go with the explanation that sneus means that you're showing your legs, sometime I once saw a very interesting video of the Tsar of Nicholas of Russia, the last Tsar, swimming in the river. And it was like an old black and white film of him swimming in the river. That's obviously somebody took. And he was totally naked, no bathing suit, just swimming there with his kids. And it occurred to me that, like, well, he's the king, he's going to be naked in front of people. And the truth is, the Tsar Nicholas, he felt that all the Tsars felt that they were the father of the people. And so the people were his family. So it meant nothing to be naked in front of them. Like, it's his own family. So maybe there is some idea that the kings, and actually another story is that the queen, when the Queen of France, Marie Antoinette, would give birth, the queens of France, I went to Versailles, and there's this room where she would give birth in her bedroom, and they would all the heads of state would be standing in the room while she's giving birth, because they would want to see the new monarch being born. So I think there's this idea. So somehow there's
the divine.
And even today, we're supposed to know if Kate, whatever, what is her name? Kate Winslet, the Duchess of Cambridge, or if she is sick or something, we have to know. There is no privacy for the kings.
But
Dam Chashuv, they have no privacy. Their lives are our lives.
But even Paro had enough sneers to go to the Nile to use the bathroom.
Say it again. What about Pharaoh?
Paro had the sneers to go privately to use the bathroom. So
was that sneers, or was that he didn't want to admit that he wasn't a god?
Yes. Yeah, I was making a joke.
Okay. Fine. But yeah, I'm sort of just arguing. I'm just trying to defend the idea that maybe it is about physical tznius, and that if you're a chashuv person, all of a sudden you can walk around in tights. You can, the king can walk around in, in unsanua clothing, and that's considered sanua for him. Perhaps I'm just throwing that out as a possibility. The other possibility is that it's because it's a bold behavior for another person, but for the king, it's not a bold behavior. Okay. And then it goes on, Rashi. Inish zila.
The inish zila hukani. Shadar choler chol lifnei kol af below dochek. Lefisha eno snua. Aval adam benoni kagon she'eno chashuv ba'osher ve'eno vush laholich behema baraglav indar kol lerchov besimta ba'ir mishum sniut. So basically, the base person doesn't really care what anyone thinks. So it's his way not to observe norms, and not especially when the issue of modesty.
Even if the seller told him do it in the normal way, it means the normal way for him. And for him, he doesn't observe these norms, right? Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Wait, you still there, Max?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, did you lose me?
No, I just thought maybe I interrupted you. Maybe I.
No. That's it.
Okay. I'm just going to show you the halacha. Here, can I do share screen? Just a second. Share screen. Here, you guys see that? Rambam Hilchos Mechira, chapter 2, halacha yud, hamocher behema lechavero, o natnolo b'matana, and I emphasized, va'amer, and he said, kanei oto kederek shebnei adam konim, im mashach o igbia kana, aval im rachav aleha, but if he wrote on it, im besadeh kana, Ve'im ba'ir lo kana. Lefisha in derech b'nei adam lirkov ba'ir. Lefichach im haya adam chashuv shidar kol lirkov ba'ir. If he was an important person and it's normal for him, oh adam mezuzal biyoter she'eno makpid al hilucho ba'ir. Ba'ir. Rochev, Kagon, Hamitaplim begidul behemot. For example, these are kinds of Zol people that deal with animals all the time. So they always are going to ride on animals. Oh, Avadim, or people, Avadim, they don't really care what people think of them there anyway in Evid. Oh, Shahaita Isha, it doesn't explain why, but we have that explanation from Rashi. Oh, Shahaya Birishuta Rabim, or that it was Rishuta Rabim, like we said, Shahar Dorsim Sham. Many people are walking there. So what? Then it works. For who? Look at this next thing. V'hu shetei. And that is only if, what is shetei lechbo? What does that mean?
Manhig biraglav.
Oh, really? Oh, juice. Oh, I don't know if that's right. Oh, no. Another possibility? What is telech? Who is that, masculine or feminine?
One.
Right. So, or feminine. So, what's feminine here? Not only the woman, but
The behemah.
the behemah. Who should telech?
And it's causative, right? She causes him.
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's just normal future that the animal should walk. In Bo, I think is like in the Reshuta Rabim. It should be really Ba, maybe, but should telech Ba. The animal has to actually move.
She's made to walk because of him.
You're saying Bo is him?
Or she's made to walk there, I think, due to him.
Yeah, she's made to walk. I don't, but why should Te'alech, you think it means made to walk?
Yes, because if not, then it's not properly manhig.
It should be who should Te'alech ba. It should be without the hey. You're saying, if it would be should Te'alech ba, that she should walk the Te'alech, you're saying it means that she's made to walk there. Okay, maybe Joel's right. That is manhig reglav. I wanted to say it's possible. I wanted to say shetelech ba in the simple future, saying that she walks there, that the animal has to actually move. It's not enough that you ride it; it has to move, and that's like Tosfot. That there has to be some zuzah. There has to be some itkadmut, some procession. There has to be some procession. It can't just because otherwise it's not. Otherwise rachuv. But wait a second. So the Rambam seems to hold. Wait a second. So does Rambam hold Rachuv Koneh? So wait a second. Does Rambam hold Rachuv Koneh?
In other places, he definitely seems to. So that's why maybe I'm wrong.
No, unless those other places. I want you to do everybody homework for everybody. Look up all the places where the Rambam's paskins that shetelech and see if he could mean shetelech manhig baraglav always. I think he might mean always that, like Joel is saying here. But wait a second. But maybe you're wrong and maybe you're right. I don't know. I mean, everything is possible. I'm just checking. No, Eliim Kane. Right. Yeah, it has to walk. The Rambam holds that that it has to walk. Fine. Okay. And just even if you thought this Ukimta, this whole story was so crazy that we're talking about where it's even the Shulchan Aruch quotes the entire Rambam here, if you see there, Mocher Behema Chavero, exactly the same thing, except his definition of Reshuta Rabim is a little bit different. Okay, anyway. Sharabim dochakim sham. The people don't mind being pushed around, I guess. Here he says the Rishut Rabim Sharabim dochakim ba, and in the Rambam he says dorsim sham. The stampede. There's like harabim. It doesn't say anashim olchim sham. He says harabim dorsim sham. Many people go there, so you're just one of the many crowds. There's a hambula. There's like a big balagan going on, and another man on a horse is not going to be a problem. Okay, so I'm just saying that. But wait a second, actually, you know what? Now I'm getting convinced that the Rambam is right, because we're admitting now that Rachuv works. Oh, unless you're saying this is all in the Ukimta Shemanig Raglav. I'm just thinking how to learn this Gemara. Yeah. So we're in the world of Manhig Raglav, and then Kinyan works. Okay. And then there's this limiting factor of when it's a sale and the person specifies as a limiting factor. Okay. Comments, questions? Anyone feels like they got a better shot than they did before? Joel?
It's just a question, because I couldn't find anyone who said this, but when we say that it's right, right, I was wondering if anyone says like that the stam mechira, we assume that without having the person actually spell it out or not. But because we've had a couple cases like that, right, where we assume that's just the assumption people make. But I didn't see anyone who said it, so maybe I'm completely wrong in trying to read it.
I think that the opposite, in fact, that that this is only if you specify it, and if you don't specify it, then any form of kinyan would work.
Yeah, it's just weird because the Breita itself seems to be like it has no qualifications on it, so it's it's a huge okimta to make on a Breita that he said that where the mocher said the following words to the person. So
yeah, because we can't understand why money. Well, because you have to say like this. You have to say like this because it's impossible. It's impossible to say that the Mishnah is talking about Rachuv because without Manhig Baraglav, and if it's talking about Rachuv without Manhig Baraglav, sorry, with Manhig Baraglav, then it's impossible to understand why it wouldn't work. Of course, why isn't it possible? What's my first assumption is wrong. My first assumption, maybe it is talking about Manhig Baraglav. In other words, the alternative is to understand the Mishnah is talking about Manhig, not Baraglav. Sorry, Rochev, not Manhig Baraglav. He's just Rochev. And therefore, the reason that he doesn't acquire in the city is because it's not a proper moving of the animal. He doesn't really, he's just randomly going to move. The animal is going to be like a drop of dust on a piece of water. It's going to move in some kind of Brownian motion. And there's so many factors going on that he has no control over it. So obviously he's not doing anything. So he's not manhig. But if he wouldn't be in the field, then it would work. So why don't we just go with that shot? So from that, actually, and from the fact that the Rambam paskins it, we can actually conclude logically that the Rambam holds money that Rochev does not acquire unless he's moving. And then right? But that's because, right, it does not acquire on itself unless he's moving. In other words, Rochev, no, take it back. I don't know. I'm going back and forth. Let's take a break here. Can think about this. In other words, we seem to have concluded that the Breita is talking about Manhig Baraglav. And our question, Joel is phrasing kind of, or I'm phrasing with Joel's help, is why don't we say the Breita is talking about regular Manhig? And the fact that he doesn't acquire in the city is because he's not really Manhig. But if he would be, regular Rochev, he's not really Rochev. And if he's in a field, he's Rochev without his feet. And then we would have very nicely to say that Rochev in a field acquires without using his feet. And then Rochev acquires. And if the Rambam is going to accept this ukimta, then it would seem to imply that he doesn't want to learn the Breita that way, which would mean the Rambam would not hold that Rochev b'sadeh would acquire unless he's Manhig Baraglav. So that is what I was saying. That seems like the Rambam is saying actually that Rochev in isolation, without using his feet, should not acquire. And maybe, therefore, Joel, you're right when it says Shetelechba, that he causes it to move by using his feet. And that's what the Rambam means. And that perhaps everybody misunderstood the Rambam. Everyone says the Rambam holds that Rochev acquires according to the Rambam. Perhaps everybody misunderstood the Rambam. I always like to say that. I always like to say that everybody misunderstands the Rambam. So if I can do that at least once this year, then that's great. Okay, let's take a break. I think it's really true, though, what you're saying. The Rambam likes to quote the language of the Braita, and he means what the Braita means when he does that. Okay, come back, everybody. Jacob, Aaron, Jessica, Sarah, Max. But let's start. I'll go with who's here. So, Noah, you want to read the next piece of the Gemara here?
Sure. We're at, by Rabbi Elazar. Haomer lechavero meshoch behema zo liknot kelim shealeha mahu. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar asks, one who says to their fellow, do pull this animal in order to make a kinyan on the utensils that are on it. Is that kinyan effective or is it not?
And what is he acquiring the animal?
No.
No. That's what Rashi says. Velo et habehema. So he's just saying, pull this animal so that you can do, what kind of kinyan is this, presumably?
I'm not really sure what the difference is between chatzer and agav, but one of those.
Well, it's mashicha. It's mashicha.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I understood your question. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's kinyan mashicha. It's mashicha. Actually, let me just show you quickly. Well, a halacha. Share screen. Here is the Shulchan Aruch. Where is it? Yeah, here. Shulchan Aruch here. If you see that one here, Sif Tet Vav. Amar le meshoch kupazo. Uba meshichata kaneh mashe betocha. Pull this, wicker basket, or this box. Actually, probably more like a box. And by dragging it, acquire what's in it. And you're not acquire the agala. You're not acquiring the shopping cart. It's actually a good example, like a shopping cart. If you pull a shopping cart out of the store, you have to take it out of the store. If it's in the store, it's not going to work. But if you take food in the shopping cart and you go out of it, the shopping cart isn't yours. But the things that are in the shopping cart become yours by acquiring it through mashicha. Masha betocha, kaneh masha betocha, afal pi shelo kana kupa. It works. In other words, even though you don't acquire the shopping cart. Right, you acquire what's in the shopping cart once you've taken it out of the shop, even though the shopping cart isn't yours. So that's a halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, and nobody argues on that halacha. So what is he asking here? He's saying do the same thing with a behema. Right? Is there okay, so go on.
Liknot miamar lekane. So it's like the way I understood Rabbi Elazar, like he was saying, Ha'omer lechavero, and then you say the exact words, Mashuch behema zo, and then like end quotation marks. Like not Kalim Shalei Mahu. And now there's going to be an issue with that, is we actually want the person to be saying the word Kane itself. Mashuch.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It's a beautiful shot. I had it understood it differently, but yours is good. Anybody else understood it a little bit differently? I understood it a little bit differently. That's a Jacob. That's a Jacob. Okay, good.
But that's
Mike,
also the
what do you say?
reformulation. Ella Mashuch Bema Zo.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. Maybe I understood. Yeah. In other words, yeah. Maybe you're right. Michael, what do you say?
I like that reading. I had initially been reading it partially because of Rashi's thing or Rashi's comment on it as almost like a statement where they're talking in hypotheticals, but not in the middle of actually conducting business. Right. You know, the notion that they talked about at one point, the concept that one might be able, right? Like you could theoretically acquire something in order to, or you could theoretically pull an animal in order to acquire the kalim that are on top of it, right? As a statement that they're kind of tossing back and forth, but where they're not necessarily, you know, it's not necessarily a business statement in this moment or a proposition, cannot then be taken as evidence of a proposition or the ability to do so later on.
Michael, you're saying
and kind of, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Are you saying it's like they're having like a theoretical conversation about halacha?
About halacha, or they're like thinking about, right, they're kind of negotiating or haggling back and forth on how exactly this is going to happen without it actually being an agreed upon standard. I feel like for me, part of it was Rashi, right? You know,
look at Rashi. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, "Liknot mika amarle kane."
You want me to read?
Yeah, liknot.
Likmot mashma ata hitkaven liknot ani eini makne lecha.
Right.
So
right.
liknot
that was part of where my read was coming from.
But I find that compatible with what I was saying, meaning if the person if just Likot were part of Rebbe Elazar's statement, but not part of the actual person who's speaking in it, then the person would be saying, okay, you try to make Kenyan, but I'm not really going to be cooperating in that. Whereas when they actually, when that person speaking actually says Kane, then they're also being Makne.
Well, I think it actually has to do with the future and the tzivui. So let's look at it's whether you're saying and then later buy it, or am I telling you buy it now? And look at the Rambam where I think it's here. Look at 2 here. Here, read 2, Noam. This is the Rambam again.
2, okay. Amar l'chavero mishoch v'tiknei o chazek v'tiknei v'kayotze b'dvarim elu v'halach v'mashach o sheichzik lo kana.
Didn't work because he said, what did he say? Tikne. Now read the next one.
Shemashma tikne lehava, because
hava, right, for the future.
Ve'adain lo hiknalo, and he hasn't given it over to him. Ela tzarich hamocher o anoten lomar lo lecha chazek v'kaneh.
Lech, I think it means, I think.
Oh, okay. Lech chazek v'kaneh, o mishoch v'kaneh, v'kayotze b'darim elu, shemashma'an sheiknen ata be'etchim shoch o yachzik.
So what is he saying? That's the Rambam's halacha. That's, by the way, the halacha. And it's from this exact question here. This little tiny question generates a halacha. And what's the differentiation the Rambam is making?
that you have to use present tense rather than future tense.
Or even I would say present tense, almost sivui, imperative. In other words, which implies that I'm actually causing you, I want you to acquire. It's sort of like if you say, tikne, take this and you'll acquire by some other means, maybe. Take this, mashoch this, and tikne tomorrow. Or I don't want, by some other means. So you're not saying immediately do it. So there's no dat machne. Rashi says there has to be dat machne. I didn't really want to give it to you. I just told you these in the future you'll get it, but I didn't mean now. So that's what he's saying. I think that's the pshat. That's why I understood it. Even independently of the Rambam, that's why I understood it after thinking about it a bit. But no, there's kene. You have to say kene, buy it. He just said liknot, maybe not liknot, maybe yes liknot. I mean, we would say that there's no difference. We would say to our minds grammatically that there's no difference, but the Gemara sees it as a difference, and that's why the Rambam changed it very beautifully to future, where it's much more clear than the infinitive. The infinitive could mean imperative. And so the Rambam puts the future tense to say very clearly not to acquire. That's the way the Rambam understands it. And I think that's the correct way. So go on.
Elam meshok be'emazov v'kanei kelim she'alei hamahu. So now our revised question is: the person says, "Pull this animal and acquire the utensil."
Right, that's the real question. Okay, so let's go on.
Mi mahani mashicha de behema le'aknuye kelim olo. So is this mashicha effective in order? The mashicha of the animal effective in order to make a kinyan over the kelim, or is it not? Keep going.
Yeah. So what's his question?
The question is, when you do mashicha on an animal, you're not seeking to make a kinyan on the animal, but can you make a kinyan on the kelim that are on the animal? Assuming that someone's instructed you to do all that.
But we just said that a kupa works. If I pull a kupa, I can acquire the things that are in it, even though I don't acquire the animal. So I don't acquire the kupa. So to here, I acquire the animal, and I'm sorry, I don't acquire the animal, but I acquire the kelim on it. Shouldn't we know this din from what I just quoted you in the Shulchan Aruch? I mean, obviously, we did. It's anachronistic what I'm saying here, but the Shulchan Aruch is not coming out of nowhere.
Well, is it coming from the Tosfot?
No, it's coming from the sources that the Tosfot quotes. But I'm just saying, yeah, the answer is in the Tosfot. The answer, I mean, say what's the question? I want you to articulate what his question is, because if his question is just does it work when I pull the animal, which is all he's saying, but what's deeper in that question? Yeah, the Tosfot is going to articulate the question.
Well, an animal is a different kind of a thing than a kupa.
That's true. Okay, Alan, what do you say?
Right, we talked in previous class about how an animal has some amount of agency, right? Like free will, exactly. As it were. Right?
So look at the Tosfos. Look at the Tosfos, just the beginning of it. We won't read it all right now, but just read the beginning of the Tosfos. Noah.
Meshach behema zo v'kanei kelim she'alei v'chulei. מבעלה, כיוון דמשיכת הבהמה שהולכת מעצמה לא שייכה בכלים, לא יקנה הכלים, אבל אם אמר משוך קופה וקנה כלים שבתוכה, פשיטא ליה דקנה.
So what's the difference?
An animal walks of its own accord.
Right. In other words, if I would translate into English, I would say like this. I would say, by the kupa, you're dragging the kupa. By the animal, you're leading the animal. I can't pull a 2,000-pound cow. The only reason I can get him to move is because I'm leading him. He's moving. So he's really asking, is the Mashicha Yeah, I'm convincing the animal to move. Yeah, is the mashicha of the animal equivalent to the mashicha of a kupa? Because they're really not. One is mashicha where I am the force directly causing the kupa to move, and by the animal, I'm just indicating to the animal that I'd like him to move, and he is moving. So, are they equivalent or not? That's his question.
Right. I mean, there's an additional layer to halakha that's mad, which says but does not say, yeah, like the animal could bolt, right? Yeah, it has gone to your hand and it slips away mid transaction. But like there's also a possibility.
I mean, the
this thing
kupa
might-
the rope could break on the thing that I'm pulling could crumble or crack. I don't know.
Okay, it
Everything
just
there's
feels like
always eventuality.
there's a little like sad suffix that kind of enters it.
I don't think the animal's going to run away. I think the main point is that like I said, who is the, I can't pull a 2,000-pound animal, but I can lead it. So it's not the same as pulling a kupa. I think that in other words, it's not dragging. Mashicha's dragging, is leading, also dragging. In this sense. So now Rava comes along. What does Rava say?
Amar Rava, ve'i amar le kane behema ve kane kelim, mi kane kelim. So Rava says, and in a hypothetical case where someone said, make a kinyan now both on the animal and on the kelim, would they actually acquire the kelim?
Now, is Rava responding to Rav Elazar?
I think it's a kasha on Rav Elazar's question. I think that's how Rashi is reading it.
Yeah. Okay. So what's his kasha?
The kasha is in order to ask for Rav Elazar to ask the question, it needs to be pashut that the answer to Rava's question is yes, one does make a kinyan. Meaning we would only even ask the question like if you make a
If he's asking about where you didn't acquire the animal, implication that he thinks that if you did acquire the animal, it would for sure work. And that's why he's asking specifically where you didn't acquire the animal. So he's saying, and you think it does work where he does acquire the animal? So he's not answering the question. He's attacking the premise of the question. He's not answering the question though, right? He's not at all answering the question. It's like when I go to somebody and I say, can you help me solve this problem in C++? And instead of the person saying, no, I don't know C++, he says, why do you want to do it in C++? It's better to do it in JavaScript or I don't know what. And I'm like, well, okay, but I'm not asking that question. And as he's saying, I asked this question, says Rav Elazar, and Rav is saying, yeah, but why did you ask that question? Why did you assume what you assumed in your question?
I read that as like
it's annoying kind of reaction, I would think, but yeah.
I read it as a kal v'chomer, right? That just as right, even
you're right. Okay, thank you very much.
Even if you did it this way, right?
You're saying even if he wouldn't have acquired in any case, even if he would own the animal. Okay, so why wouldn't he acquire? Okay, great. It's a kal v'chomer. He's saying, and certainly he's answering. So you're saying he's answering the question, saying even if he owned it, he wouldn't acquire, and if he didn't own it, then kol sheken he wouldn't acquire. I don't know if that's right though, but it's possible. I don't think that's right because go on, read what he continues to say, Rava.
Me?
Chatzer.
Chatzer me'alechet he. Chatzer me'alechet lo kana. So it's like a walking courtyard, and a walking courtyard doesn't affect kinyan.
Doesn't acquire, and therefore you thought he would have acquired if he owned the animal because of a chatzer, but it's a walking chatzer. And I go on. V'ki tema.
וכי תימא כשעמדה, והכל שאילמלך לא קנה, עומד ויושב לא קנה. And well, you might say that when it stands, it is kones, but we have this principle that everything that were it to walk, it is not makne. Then even when it stands or when it sits, it's also not makne.
Right. So don't tell me what. Don't tell me that you could acquire this through if you would own the animal, and owning the animal would mean that you're acquiring through what method?
Rishecha, yeah.
No.
No, it's Kinyan Agav.
Kinyan Chatzer.
Kinyan Chatzer. I don't know. Is it Kinyan? Joel said Kinyan Agav.
I think they're the same thing, right? Oh no, Agav is only when you buy the Chatzer at the same. So this would actually be an Agav, I think, not a right. Chatzer is when someone throws something in your Chatzer. They might be different.
But this is it is a Chatzer, right? But
yeah,
it's a Chatzer mehalechet.
Yeah.
So presumably it's Kinyan Chatzer, but you're saying it's so. What's Kinyan Agav?
Agav is when like you have a Chatzer, like I'm going to buy your Chatzer, and there's a bunch of chairs on the Chatzer, and I say I'm going to do a Kinyan method that works for the Chatzer, and Agav the Chatzer, I'm going to purchase the things that are in it as well.
Does that work for Karka as well? Is that typically for Karka?
Yeah, for Karka, exactly. We do that all the time. Even though the method, let's say I'm using Kesef, right? Kesef is Konef for Karka, it's not Konef for Metaltalin, but I can be Konef Metaltalin through Kinyan Agav of the Kesef that I use for the Karka.
Wait, so Rav Joel, you just said Agav. Can you just say one more time how Chatzer is different?
I think Chatzer, Kinyan Chatzer would be like you throw something into my Chatzer. Right, that I already own.
Yes, I already own the Chatzer, is regular Kinyan Chatzer. This is like a special kind of Kinyan Chatzer where you acquire the Chatzer, you actually acquire the Chatzer, and with it, the things that are in the Chatzer. Like you acquire land with the trees in the land, or something in the land. So you're acquiring it, the cow, but you're not acquiring it because of Mashiach, but you're acquiring the Kelim because they're in the Chatzer. So that's what I'm calling Kinyan Chatzer. In other words, it's not really Kinyan Chatzer, it's Kinyan Agav Chatzer. But you're acquiring the Chatzer and you're getting the things that are in the Chatzer, but not because of Mashiach. He says that wouldn't work. And then what does this next line, Behilchata B'Kfuta, mean?
When the animal is bound up, it actually does work. So it doesn't work when it's standing, when it's sitting, or when it's walking, but if it's bound up, it does.
Right. Now, what's my kasha on this? What's my difficulty? So wait, so Alan, you said it's a kal v'chomer. If it doesn't work there, then it certainly can't work in the way that Rav Elazar tried to make it work. But what did Rav Elazar say, though? How is Rav Elazar different? I would say it's not a kal v'chomer. And I would say it's not a kal v'chomer because he was suggesting something entirely different. What was he suggesting? Alan. Put you on the spot here.
He's not specifying. Well, I guess the behemoth is tied up, right? Because you're gonna meshochet. But it's not necessarily. We don't have
not tied up. No, you're gonna tied up means when I think of tied up, I think of like at a rodeo where they grab they jump off they lasso the calf and they tie its four legs together and it can't move. That's kafuta. You're not going to moshech a 2,000-pound cow like that.
Right.
He said moshech.
Okay.
So he was talking not about kafuta. And what kind of kinyan was he thinking of doing? Like the kupa,
right?
Which would be
Kinyan. It's Kinyan
Mashiach
and Agav that we were just talking
about.
No,
it'd be Kinyan Mashiach.
Because it's still Mashiach because it's in
Mashiach. So that's why I'm annoyed by this question of Rav of Rava, because Rava is saying you're talking about the case of Mashiach, but you are assuming that in the case of Kinyan Agav of a Chatzer would work, but it wouldn't work. And that's all irrelevant to the question, because he says, okay, fine, I was assuming that. He could answer, okay, fine, I was assuming that, and maybe I'm wrong about that, but let's move forward. My question still stands. My question was, Mashiach. Does Mashiach work? I wasn't even asking about this other Kinyan. And that's why I find it's like an annoying thing. It's like saying, America lost the Vietnam War. So tell me, did America also lose Afghanistan? So you say, oh, but they didn't lose the Vietnam War. You say, okay, fine, whatever. But my question is still valid. It's a different. He's asking on Mashiach. Does the Mashiach work? As Rashi told us, because it's a self-moving object. It's not a normal Mashiach. And Rava is saying, but you're assuming that if it would be a chatz, that if you'd buy it, then it would work because it would be a chatzer, and it would work because of chatzer, but it wouldn't work because of chatzer because it's not a chatzer, because it's a walking chatzer. Okay, he's right, but it still doesn't directly address the question. That's all I'm saying. Here, let's look here. Let's look at Tosfos now. I'm going to skip a little bit in Tosfos. I'm going to skip the middle just because we don't have time. But Tosfos sort of brings kind of proofs of other places. But maybe who would like to read the Tosfot? Who didn't read?
You can try it. We're taking it.
Alan? Okay, so from Im Tomar, it's about, I don't know if this is a good place to pick up, but let's just pick it up from there. Im Tomar, it's about like 15 lines from the bottom. Yeah, I think it's relevant to our discussion we just had. So let's look at there. Sort of a second question that he asks he asks a couple of questions in this Tosfos, but then he comes to this question.
Okay, Vim Tomer, Amay Nakat Meshoch Behemaza, below Naket Kani. Right? Why does it say pull the animal? It doesn't say anything about acquire this animal. That's in the Rabbi Elazar's
right.
Fire.
That's his question. In his question, he said Meshoch. He didn't say Kani. So he says why. And now he's going to propose a possible answer, which he says is not going to work out.
Okay, so one possible reason why Rabbi Elazar would say Meshoch rather than Kani is for a Kani case, it's obvious that that he would have acquired because the behemoth is like a chatzer in this case, even though it's a chatzer me'alechet, it's still a chatzer, and so the kinyan would work. Okay.
In other words, that Taka, he argues with Rava, and he says a chatzer me'alechet does koneh, and that's why he was trying to koneh, and he was trying to koneh with and he didn't want, if he would have said koneh, you would have thought he meant koneh because of agav the chatzer. If he would have said koneh the animal, buy the whole animal, and the kelim with it, maybe it's because he held that you could use an animal as a kinyan agav chatzer. Im ken,
ben Meshoch nami amay mispekale kevan she'ela lo harei ki'ilu yishalo ad la'achar kinyan v'iknem mitam chatzer. So you could, if that's really true, why wouldn't Meshoch be equally, the language of Meshoch be equally obvious?
What does Meshoch mean? Meshoch means do not acquire the animal, but just get the animals through kinyan chatzer anyway, through some kind of mashicha.
Right, because he lent when he's drawing the animal, he's kind of blending it to the guy whose behemoth is just kind of blending it to the guy who's pulling it, and it's as though the person who's pulling is acquiring until up until the time that the kinyan has
exactly. In other words, when you tell somebody pull this animal, it's like and acquire the animals, the kelim that are in it. Well, it doesn't matter whether he acquires the animal or not. Kinyan agav chatzer would work there because temporarily he did acquire it. In other words, Tosfos is giving, it's a big kiddush. He's saying it doesn't really it doesn't really isolate any new variable by saying don't own the animal, because even if you don't own the animal, you still do own the animal temporarily for those moments.
Right. It's like if
You can't get around it.
It's like if I'm picking up furniture off of Craigslist and someone says, "Oh, you can use my cart to wheel it to your place," and then you should give me the cart back. It's
right. But let me go one step further. I'll just take a simpler case in the supermarket. I take the food out of the supermarket in the agala of the supermarket, and I'm wheeling it. And as I'm going through the parking lot, a car hits the agala and breaks all the food. And I go back to the store and I say, I paid for this food. Give it to me now. He said, well, we already gave it to you. He says, but I never acquired it. It was in your agala the whole time. I never acquired it. Give me all the food again. It's your agala. So the shopkeeper says, but I learned this Tosfot. And I know that temporarily you own that agala until, as long as you were doing the Mashiach. And therefore you acquired those things inside agav, the agav kinyan chatzer, agav, Mashiach chatzer. Even though, says, even though I never sold you that thing, you acquired it temporarily, says Tosfos. Okay, that's, ma'asim b'kol yom. So that's what Tosfos says. So he says, therefore, the reason that he said mashoch couldn't have been in order to say this is a different case because you don't own the animal. Because it's not a different case because you don't own the animal. Whether you own the animal, you don't own the animal. Whether you own the agala, you don't own the agala. It's as though you own the agala, and it should work. So why, Taka, did he say pull the animal? So that's his answer. Yesh lo imar.
Yesh lo imar. כשאמר לי משוך, לא השאיר לו בהבהמה לקנות הכלים מטעם חצר, אלא במשיכת הבהמה. Right. When one guy said the other to Paul, he was not lending him the animal specifically for the purpose of acquiring the kelim through the animal by means of chatzer.
By kinyan agav chatzer.
Right. No, the reason why he was giving him the animal was to pull the animal and therefore acquire the thing. To
do mashicha. To do mashicha. He dafka wanted him to use a specific form of kinyan called mashicha and not the form called chatzer or agav chatzer.
Right. He wasn't giving him the supermarket cart in order for him to
own the cart temporarily and then acquire the vessels, but he wanted him to drag because if you would go into the store and like lasso, a bag of rice and pull it out of the store, that's a kinyan of mashicha that you did on the rice, pulling it out of the store. He wanted him to do mashicha on the animal and acquire and he's asking, do I have to directly pull the bag of rice, or can I pull an animal that's holding the rice? That's because everybody knows that if you pull the rice, it would work. We go on.
Okay. Inami, he have by kind of behaving the kalim that have a mahadarle, the kani. לא היה יכול לדע מזה שבמשיכת הבהמה יקנה הכלים, כי שמה מטעם חצר קני בחוטה. So another explanation is if Rabbi Elazar had asked about kane behema kelim, and then you could respond to that.
No, Vahavi Mahadirle, and he answered him, and he answered his shaila that he could, Dekani. He says, yeah, you can, it works. But he wouldn't have gotten a sufficiently specific answer.
Right.
Well,
Right.
haya
You would not
yachol
been,
ledat.
you would not have been able to derive just from that back and forth that through the Mashiach of the animal that you can also get the kalim too, because maybe just from that particular exchange, the only thing we'd learn out is that Chatzer is
The
able
Chatzer
to
worked.
acquire in that
So
case.
he couldn't just say Kane. If he would have said Kane, he would have known which reason that he used to acquire it.
Right.
Therefore, he said Meshoch, because and he Dafka wanted him to see if Kinyan Meshicha would work on an animal and not any other form of Kinyan, and therefore Rava's question is kind of a stupid question. That's what I'm trying to say, because like Rava's question was like, yeah, but it's not that I'm assuming. It's also saying like this. It's not that he's assuming that the other one would have worked. It's just that he wants to acquire in this particular way because he's asking a hypothetical question if this would work. And he's never going to get an answer in the Gemara. And this tells you something. Rabbis don't like to answer hypothetical questions. Give me a real question. I want to do this thing. I did this thing. Did it work? Did it not work? You're creating, Rav Elazar, some hypothetical question, which may never, ever happen in the world. Why should we trouble ourselves with answering it? You have no, or as they would say in modern law, you have no standing. Right? I don't know if there's a pun there, but, you have to have a real question. And so he never gets an answer. So wait, let's go back. I sort of skipped along Rashi here, but let's go on. We don't have so much time. So let's go on. Finish the Gemara. Wait, so who's finishing the Gemara? Noah. Let's go back to Noah. Thank you very much, Al.
Okay. Amru le Rav Papa Rav Huna bare de Rav Yeshua l'Rava Alamata hayam elech b'sfina ve'kavtzu dagim ve'naflu letoch hasfina hachinami dechatzer ma'alecheti v'lo kane. So Rav Papa and Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, said to Rava, but according to what you're saying, namely about the Chatzer Ma'alechet, then when you have a ship that's on the waters and fish jump and they fall onto the ship, that would also be a Chatzer Ma'alechet.
Because the boat is moving, is walking.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be Kona the fish, where the assumption is we seem to assume you actually would be Kona the fish, so that's why it's a kasha.
Right. Wait just a second. Okay, so what's his answer? Continue.
Marlahu, Sfina minach naicha, v'miahu deka mamtula. So Rava says to them, the ship is actually, I think it's staying still. And it's actually the water that's moving the ship. So it's not a Chatzer Ma'alechet, it's just a regular Chatzer. And that's why Kinyan.
How do you understand that? How would you put that into modern terminology? What would you say that means?
Chatzer Ma'alechet was an important category for the animal because it has a mind and a will of its own. But here the ship doesn't have a mind and a will of its own.
Okay, yeah. In other words, the animal is of its own force moving, whereas the boat is being acted upon by some other external force, the water. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I just couldn't. I sort of thought it was less about will and more about physics, right? So that the boat is being just carried along by the current, but the animal has enough, can like generate energy, kinetic force in order to move itself. But then I guess the kasha is like, what about a motorized boat or something that like does?
Yeah, maybe a motorized boat is like a the word engine where it comes from. You know where the word engine comes from?
No.
Joel, you have to know this because you worked on engines. No?
I assume it's the same root as energy, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I mean I don't know what energy is, but no, engine. What's the source of that word? Anybody?
From genie?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Alan. From genie. Why? Explain.
Well, the genie is the motivating force of
Exactly. An engine has like a magical genie in it that's making it move. It's engine. It's got inside of it something that's pushing it. It is a self-moving object. So maybe it would be like a chatzer me'alechet. A motorboat might be different than a boat. And even a rowboat, has got a person acting on it. Okay, so maybe I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. But so now fine. So he says so according to that, he wouldn't acquire it. He says no, it's not a hetzer mechalechet. Now go read on, Noam.
Amar le Ravina Rav Ashi al ma'ata hayta me'alechet bereshut harabim v'zarakla get letochika or letoch kalata achinam midela megarsha.
So he says, I'll translate. So he says, if you're walking in the Reshut Rabim and you throw your get into a woman's bosom or onto her hat or her whatever's on her head, you wouldn't work because she's a Hatzer Mehalechet. And so therefore, but we know that you can divorce a woman in such a way. May it not be so nice. Amarle.
Kalta minach naicha ve'ihidika maska mituta.
So it says no. The hat is stationary, and she is walking underneath it, and she's causing it to move. Now, you could say this is. Now, my question, first of all, that's the end of the Gemara. Next Mishnah, we don't have an answer to the question that Rev Elazar posed. That's what I was saying before. There's no answer to his question. He just posed a hypothetical question. Does Mashiach work on an animal if you pull it? And we never answer that question. And we just instead start talking about Chatzer Me'alechet. This is a famous topic, Chatzer Me'alechet. This is the primary source for it. These two cases seem to be redundant. You could try to say the second case is maybe more close to her body. It's like her clothes are part of her, and perhaps it's different from therefore it's like her herself, and therefore, except that the whole reason that the get works is because you're throwing it into her chatzer, and it means an object. So we're considering it a separate object. So it's not clear to me that this is a new question, any different from the boat question. And therefore, my conclusion, just because we have not so much time, my conclusion is that these are two separate incidences that occurred, two separate questions that happened at various times on the same sugya, and the editor of the Talmud put them juxtaposed to each other just because they're the same question. But not that one question follows because of the other question. The order could have been switched, or one of them could have been missing. So I think these are just two identical questions, essentially, on clarifying what is a Hatzer Me'alechet. And we don't know about Mashiach. And do we know about Rechiva? Joel says we don't know. Although the Rambam seems, like we talked about before, we did come to some conclusion. Yeah, Sarah.
I'm wondering whether the second case, the get case, isn't redundant because there's like a Havamina that her basket on top, like especially visualizing her like carrying the basket on top of her head is like more connected to her.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
The boat is to the water.
Yeah, but we do say that it's a separate, isn't it that the get works because, I mean, why is the get, maybe I'm wrong. Why does the get work? Why does the get work? Isn't it because you fell into her hand? Wait, Josie, what do you say? I was just thinking, what?
This hachinami de lo migoreshet.
No, that's like, would you say that it's not migoreshet? That's the way I understood it.
Because the case from Gittin, I seem to remember you could get this would have been the opposite of the case in Gittin. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, that's the suggestion. That's like
Would you say that she is not migoreshet?
Right, and in fact, she is. Of course, she's migoreshet. I was just thinking. Yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. I was just thinking that maybe
Also,
But
she
the
owns
how-
the basket, presumably.
That what? She
She
owns
owns the
the
basket.
basket is her chatzer, and it falls into it. And
Yeah.
her chatzer is kone, even without her
But it's like
grabbing it.
physically connected. Right. So maybe the fact that she's walking around with it doesn't seem to even really matter as long as she owns it. I don't know.
No, I mean, I agree with you.
I'm trying to come up with a way for these cases not to be redundant. I'm not being very successful.
No, maybe you are. I agree with you that it's kind of like her clothing, and therefore you might think it's part of her, and therefore it's not a separate entity, and therefore why it's not a, and therefore no, but we're saying it is a chatzer mehalechet. But you can't say she is a chatzer mehalechet. No, that's
No,
the
the
thing. Once you
basket is a
say it's a
chatzer mehalechet.
chatzer, it's separate from her, and it is her chatzer, and therefore you can't say and so therefore why is it different from a boat? Joel, you have.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's different in terms of the reference frame, right? That from the outside observer, the thing is going with her. It's like her movable. It literally is her movable chatzer, right? It's her property that's on her. Versus the boat, you can see it as either the water is moving or the boat is moving. That doesn't make a difference. But you can't, from the observer on the ground, you can't make a claim that the basket isn't moving. In the same way, you could say, I don't know which is moving, the water or the boat, from an observer from the side, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know which is moving, the water or the boat.
Yeah, you could say, I don't know which of the two is moving, but or if you're on the boat, actually maybe is a better case of that. If you're on the boat, you can't say, I don't know if the boat's moving or the water's moving. But if you're watching the woman walking, you can say, I know the woman is walking, therefore the basket's moving.
In other words, maybe by the river in a boat, the water around me is stationary relative to the boat. Exactly. I'm in the same water all the time.
Yeah.
And the water is just dragging down the river. Mm-hmm. And the boat is in the same water. The water is moving, but the boat in the water is stationary. But that's exactly the same with the hat.
No, I'm saying
I think
she's moving, and the hat is moving.
It's a different.
To her, the hat isn't moving.
You can see like two trains, right? Where in other words, like the water, you could, when you're on the boat, you could say, actually, we're staying still on the water. The earth beyond the water below us is just moving backwards, right?
Yeah, which I think the nice thing about that explanation, I think, is that in the boat case, right, we're asking about someone on the boat who is Makne the fish, right?
Who's Kone the fish?
Who's Kone the fish, right? It's someone on the boat who's Kone the fish, and it's someone watching the woman walking who is, okay, I guess that doesn't work. She's Kone the.
Yeah, she's Kone.
She is Kone, okay, never mind. Right, but there is some difference of perspective there where like, you're on the boat versus you're watching her.
Yeah, that's the thing. One is you're actually on the object and you're wondering about, is it moving or not? And it's very easy to say the object, right? We've all had that experience on a train, I'm sure, right? Where we're not sure which is moving. And the other one is where I'm like, let's say I'm the man throwing the get to the woman, right? I know that she's moving, and therefore if I throw it in her basket, I know the basket is moving. That seems more like a chatzer mehalechet at this point. But
But I feel like I don't know if then getting into the intentionality brings up that like the fish are this total natural byproduct, right? Like no one is intending for the fish, right? Like that's not an intentional effect of like moving the fish from the water to the ship versus with the get. There is an intentional, right? Like that is something that someone is trying to, so I don't know if that also plays into the question of the person who is standing on the ship and like the passivity of that role.
Yeah, well, I appreciate all your answers to my to my being stumped and my solution. But in either case, let's conclude that the chatzer mehalechet has to actually be that the chatzer is mehalechet and not that something is moving it. And if it is, in fact, stationary and something is moving it, it would acquire things for the person. Let me just show you one quick halacha. I see what Rabbi Landis is here, but I want to show you one more halacha in the Rambam. Yeah. Yeah, the Rambam says here, you look at just 4 here. Amru lo hamakne, Amru lo hamakne. The seller says, Mishok behema v'kanei kelim she'aleha. Pull this animal, this is our case, and acquire the vessels that are on it. Ho'il v'lo hikne lo gufa behema. Af al pi shemashcha v'hi kfuta. Oh, wait a second, hi kfuta. That means she's like a kupa. The animal is like a kupa, which everybody agrees a kupa works. Lo kana kelim shalah ad shim shoch hakelim atzma, because he didn't pull the kelim themselves. But why is it different? Why is it different from a box? And if you say, well, that's just the Rambam, it's not. The Shulchan Aruch quotes him. See 4 here in the Shulchan Aruch, same thing. Why doesn't it work? You hear the question? It should be like a box. So look at the Sma, the Sefer Miras Einayim. That's what I brought here. He says, V'hachi tamo, and I think this is the explanation. The kevan the ibaya de lo ifshitahi, since our question was never answered. Remember I said it's a hypothetical question and it was never answered in the Gemara? So, Svirule, de b'mekachu memchar, mokminan sfeika beheschas marikama. Since you leave it in the hands of its original owner in a mechira because we don't know if it works. But wait a second, that's only if you're pulling the animal and the animal's walking. Va'afilu im tafas zeh b'meshicha motzi'in biyado. Even though he pulled it, you take it away from him. Masha'en came b'metzia. There ain't no marikama. In the Metzia, there's no marikama. Hilchach misfeika kana. The purchaser buys it, gets it. Hamoshech. Va'acher sheba'ach harav, and somebody else who comes, it's false, miyado, motzi miyado. He doesn't get it. V'notnim lezeh, hamoshech lefanav, v'hu mikre mari. Okay, actually, that's okay. That's just saying that it's a suffix in our Gemara, and therefore it doesn't work. But that's talking about a regular case. Why kfuta? So I think the Bear Hated maybe says. He says like this: Kevan the ein meshicha shave, the meshicha behema he bahalicha, or meshicha kelim hu begreira. When you're pulling an animal, the animal walks, but when you're pulling a box, it's greira, and your force is what's causing it, so that's why it works. Va'afal gav de ata kafuta, and here he explains. And even though now the animal is tied up and it's like a kupa, mikol makom holchim acharov. The einan kfutin. Most animals are not going to be tied up, and therefore we make one din. And even though he tied up the animal, we're not going to let him acquire it. Masha'en kain be amar le mishok kupa. When he specifically says pull the box with the kelim inside, the besif sha'achareze the mishika kupa va'kelim leolam shavehi, because that's always equivalent. In other words, all kupas are the same, but animals, sometimes they're tied up and sometimes they're not, and we want a halacha psuka. We want a constant halacha, and therefore we don't distinguish between tied animals and untied animals, and we say that they never work. So it's always going to be a chatzer me'alechet, essentially. It's almost like a din de rabbanan. There's okay, so we'll stop there. And we learned a very interesting sugya of kupa me'alechet, which is not kone. Okay, we're finished for today. Next, after Pesach, we have 2 weeks off. After Pesach, we'll start with the next Mishnah, which Lexi will give over. Rabbi Lennis, did you want to say something, or you were just waiting for the end?
Hi. First of all, it's good to see everybody. My condition, I'm improving, but it's slow. And doctors have forbidden me from doing much of anything. But